Hello and welcome to SpeedDrawFactory. Do you know this situation? You want to paint a portrait and you want to prepare your palette with all the colors you need, but you are new to the whole digital art thing and you are not sure which colors to choose. Then you do some research and eventually discover something like this. Flesh tone palettes in a very stereotypical array. Don't get me wrong, these skin tones palettes are essentially not bad. They include tones we would expect to find in skin. Well, there is just a small problem. Whose skin are we talking about? My skin? Your skin? I guess you know what my point is. We all have different types of skin tones. So if you are looking for skin tone palettes for your painting, you will most likely end up using idealized universal skin tones. Very often they are not sufficient. Well, you can use them for your blocking in and then later play around with your saturation value and hue, but most of the time they won't give you exactly what you need. The light. This is Keanu Reeves. And this is Keanu Reeves in a club. The light is an essential part in a painting and also in a portrait painting. The Keanu Reeves example is an extreme one, I admit that, but nevertheless, with your universal flesh tone palette you won't come too far. Now you say, no, I want to paint a portrait in normal light. But what is normal light? This? Or maybe this? Or maybe this one? You see, we cannot handle light so easily. Depending on the light, flesh tones will change. Morning light is usually cooler than evening light. That means that your hue in the morning could shift towards the cool side of the color wheel, while in the evening they turn to the warm side. So in extreme cases you could have very bright low saturated blues in your color palette, or purples, or even greens. Because unfortunately the sun is not our only light source. There are lots of other influences that could modify your skin tones. One of the most important one is reflected light. Now I will keep this short so you get an idea what I'm talking about, but I will dedicate an entire video on the topic in the future. Here's an example. Let's say you sit in a room surrounded by green walls. You will have a good amount of greens in your skin. That is caused by the light rays that bounce off the walls and being reflected onto your skin. The stronger the light source and the more saturated the green on your wall, and depending on how close you sit to the wall, less or more greens can be discovered on your face. Now the problem is that reflected light does not show up in its purity when hitting another object. Reflected light will also lose a certain amount of intensity after bouncing off a surface. The reflected light will in addition mingle with the local color of the other object it is hitting. Let's say your skin has some reddish tone to it and it comes in contact with reflected green light. Now we have the problem that we find red on the opposite side of green on the color wheel, which means they neutralize and desaturate each other, and you end up with a weird cocktail of brown-gray. Of course you won't end up with a grayish complexion because reflected light is not as strong as the primary light source, but it does have a certain impact on how things will eventually look. Let's have a look at a photo of Christopher Hivju portraying Tormund in the Game of Thrones TV show. In this scene he's up north beyond the wall and the environment is icy. It's just ice everywhere all around them. That's important to know. Now let's take our skin tone palette and compare it with colors we actually see on his skin. Let's sample a few colors. And we won't talk about values right now. Let's just go with the hue. And as you can see, we won't come far with that palette. The thing is, as beginners we won't consider factors like light and reflected light in our painting. And we wonder why the portrait or any other picture we paint doesn't look like the one in our source or reference. But let's try it. Let's use this skin tone palette I have downloaded and apply it to paint this portrait. Somehow it looks off because the warm skin tones don't go together with the cool winter air that surrounds him. It looks like a copy and paste image somehow. So now here is the question, how can I get my skin tones right? The answer is maybe not as satisfying as you might expect it to be. You have to learn how to see colors in order to get them right. Draw and paint what you see and not what you think you see. Don't get trapped by looking at these skin tone palettes, wondering why your painting doesn't look anything like your reference. Very often, not always, but very often you can't use them to get the right result. But if you have trouble seeing colors and values, here's a trick. Sample the colors from your source, at least the most important ones. Look for colors and values that appear often, colors and values that are important for the facial features. And the most important thing, look for the colors and values in the reflected light, because reflected light is the thing that merges your portrait with the background and make it look real. You want the composition to look coherent, like a unit. And if you want to do so, we need to know about the light that surrounds the person or an object. I hope this video was somehow helpful. I tried to keep it short and come to the point right away. There is much more we could add to this topic, but this series is supposed to give you quick answers without losing focus on the topic. If you have questions, please ask. I usually answer within a couple of hours. And check out my other stuff. It might be helpful or entertaining. I'm Chris. This channel is called SpeedDrawFactory. Thank you very much for watching and see you in the next video.
And for heaven's sake, don't paint pretty.